Hi everyone, welcome to Z Universe. In this video, I want to give you my personal take on entropy as defined by the second law of thermodynamics. And without further ado, let's get started. So I think the most pressing question is, what is entropy and how do you define entropy? Because entropy is not, as far as I understand, something that exists naturally. It is an artificial measurement of how random and how chaotic things are. So using the example that my professor gave me, if you have 10 coins, an arrangement of all 10 coins being heads would be of extremely low entropy because it's orderly and there is only one way to do it. There is only one way of achieving that type of order, and it's having all 10 coins being flipped to their heads. And the probability of that is actually very low, right? Because all 10 of these coins would have to coincidentally land on the same side. Now, an arrangement with high entropy would be something like 5 heads and 5 tails, because this arrangement allows for a lot of different ways to manifest itself. There are simply more ways of having 5 heads and 5 tails. So my understanding is basically that high entropy is kind of related in a way to probability. So high entropy things correlates to things that are more probable, whereas low entropy things correlates to things that are less probable. So once I made the connection between entropy and probability, I began to see this connection of something being high entropy and something being prevalent, something being low entropy and something being extremely scarce. And this leads me to the most important law around entropy, and that is the second law of thermodynamics, which states that entropy is always increasing. Now, this wasn't so hard for me to understand precisely because I've tied it with probability before. It only makes sense that over time, what is more probable will gradually take over, and what is less probable will gradually decay into nothingness. So, this statement, sounds very scientific, but I think on a philosophical level, this really means that the natural state of the universe is chaos. To make this jump between a scientific idea of entropy and this existential thing, that the natural state of the universe is chaos, because chaos is the thing that is high entropy, and chaos is the thing that is more likely to happen, and the universe will push towards that thing that is more likely to happen, especially given time. You can get lucky once and get that low entropy thing. You can get lucky twice. But imagine if your time is infinity. Then the thing that's high entropy is destined to happen, because given enough tries, the thing that is more probable will eventually take over. And I think that has a lot of implications on how we look at this world. I actually learned this idea of the second law of thermodynamics back when I was a junior in high school in AP chemistry class with Miss Capadia. And I think the thing that I was most confused about was, so entropy right now is definitely more than entropy a million years ago, right? That's according to the law. So what happens, in 100 million years? And I'm glad Professor Brian Greene answered this question. I think it was one of the first things he said in class was that at the end of time, when time gets big enough, everything will decay into nothingness. And it's starting to make sense to me now, because if this law holds true, which I don't doubt it does, then it means that everything that is high entropy, and that is the scattering particles, the complete decomposition of anything with order. So like human beings, we are extremely ordered, but even things that are less ordered will eventually decay into nothingness given enough time, because of the fact that entropy is always increasing, and because the universe so desperately wants to return to its natural state, that is chaos. The natural state is more likely to happen. So given enough time, chaos, the natural state, will happen. Human beings. And in fact, I think anything that's alive really is highly patterned. And even things that are not animated, for example, a desk, a piece of rock, water, all of these things have quite low entropy, because in order to exist and appear and manifest itself in a very patterned way, in a very recognizably patterned way, you have to have low entropy. And this leaves us with the question, if the natural state of the universe is chaos, if it's destined to head towards chaos, then why do any orderly things exist in the first place? And my professor gave a very, very convincing argument for this, and that is the process called the Entropic TwoStep. And what this does is really, locally you decrease the entropy, like the creation of a human being, creation of something orderly, creation of a desk. But in order to compensate for this local decrease, you need to increase the overall entropy. And this idea of the Entropic TwoStep is applicable to so many different things. I mean, really, if I were to order my room, the entropy would decrease, no doubt, because everything exists in an arrangement that is less probable, right? If I were to leave my room the way it is right now, which is pretty pathetic, this is the most prevalent way and form that it exists. So the Entropic TwoStep, I order my room, I have to give something, I have to compensate for this orderliness, and of course I used up energy when I ordered this room. To gain this energy, I had to eat food. I mean, think about the implications of the entropy that takes place in that. That's a very high entropy process. And I probably had to sweat. All of my muscles had to move. So in the end, it is a process that increases entropy, yet my desk was ordered nonetheless. Not really. So this process is not only applicable to the grand scheme of things, it is actually very relatable on a day-to-day basis. I think the scientific interpretation of entropy is one thing, that we are orderly beings, that everything that holds value and meaning to us are orderly, and eventually everything orderly comes to an end, and everything that holds value and meanings to us are bound to fade. And that's the scientific description, and that's already bleak enough. But the humanistic interpretation of this constant increase of entropy, I think, hits me even more viscerally. And because of a lot of the stuff we say, like love is timeless, lasts forever, like friendship lasts forever, maybe a moment lasts forever, maybe a bond between the mother and the son lasts forever, and just none of these things can hold true if you're really placing everything in a scientific context like the entropic state, because entropy is bound to increase. And in order to feel anything at all, we need consciousness. And consciousness just cannot survive in a very chaotic state. Consciousness require very orderly, so the less probable state. So given time, anything less probable just going to go away. Another way of coping with this thought is that perhaps we are just destined to be ephemeral, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I think a more positive twist would be to use this limited time and create something that doesn't last forever. There's no need for that, but rather serve us well during our lifetimes. And I like to end this video on a more philosophical note, and that is that if the true nature of the universe is chaos, because it's the more probable state, then our existence as human beings is essentially a statistical fluke. And we are the 10 coins that landed all heads. In fact, it's not just human beings. Anything orderly, anything that we can find in what we traditionally call nature, animals, rocks, trees, soils, water, all of these are orderly things. And according to the second law of thermodynamics, they're really against what the universe wants, and that is the most natural state, and that is the more probable state, and that is chaos. The most natural state, the true nature, is just supposed to be a bunch of atoms swarming around. I mean, that is really technically what the true nature is. And on that note, thank you so much for watching the video, and I hope you enjoyed it.